Welcome to House of NIO, the podcast where we explore the ideas and innovation shaping the future of smart mobility. In this episode, we will talk about battery systems with two incredible guests. From NIO, we have Dr. Frank Kindermann, head of battery systems in Europe, and Ines Miller, battery technology expert from P3, a global authority on e-mobility solutions. They will both dive into the revolutionary features of the NIO ET9, featuring a full domain 900-volt architecture that sets three global benchmarks: the highest system voltage, peak charging power, and top charging current. But what does it take to develop such a cutting-edge battery system? And what will the future of fast charging and battery systems hold? This is what our two experts will discuss. Welcome to House of NIO.
Yeah, welcome also from my side, and welcome, Ines. It's great to have you here today.
Yeah, thank you, Frank, for the invitation. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, that's great. We've now heard in the intro already quite a lot of things about the newly introduced ET9 in China recently at NIO Day. But first, let's cover our current models based more on the 400-volt architecture and also tested in a very recent study of yours, which was really great. Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Sure. Yeah, I think from P3 side, we're always trying to be close to the latest innovations and kind of monitor technology development, market development, especially when it comes to electric mobility. And back in 2019, we realized that there is actually no real KPI that compares charging performance together with the long distance capabilities of an electric vehicle. So this was the motivation and the reason why we have invented the P3 charging index, so-called, which is now in the sixth generation of updates that we run, and where we had this year the first time also a Chinese brand as with NIO in our test drives for the European charging index, and really showed a good performance immediately. So ranged on on second place actually, even with the 400-volt technology. And I think for the premium segment, it's only the Porsche Taycan that outperforms the NIO performance in terms of charging behavior, which is quite impressive.
That is quite a great feat, right? To have the NIO ET5 Touring coming in very close second to a Porsche Taycan, and even ahead of other well-known luxury brands like BMW or Mercedes-Benz and Audi as well.
Yeah. And maybe I just briefly also explain what the P3 charging index does or what it means. So the index in general compares or answers the question how much actual range you can recharge in a vehicle within 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. So it's really what the end customers experience for actual driving range. And a charging index of 1 equals that you can actually recharge 300 of kilometers within 20 minutes. So ranging from a state of charge from 10 to 80%. And this is then a charging index of 1.
Yeah, that's quite great. So really being the long distance driver, right? When saying you start with a full battery, that basically means you can go at least 600 kilometers with just a 20-minute stop, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the nice thing what the index also combines is that we not only consider the charging performance itself. So of course we take charging curves, which are different for different vehicles and brands, but also then we take into consideration the consumption of the vehicle. Yes. So in terms of then overall what you experience then for the charging index or the rating is in combination when you actually have a good charging performance and in combination have a low consumption is how you can actually achieve a good ranking in the index. And I think that is something that we have seen for the NIO. So
yes, yeah, and I completely agree. I think the P3 charging index is something that is really valuable to users and people driving electric vehicles, because in the end, it doesn't help you a lot to have a very high number as a peak charging peak charging power, and you basically run into a derating, so that basically the charging power drops already after 5 minutes of charging potentially, but that you rather let's say, value something what we have seen in our NIO ET5 touring battery with our long-range battery that we had in the test there, that we continuously from 10 to 70% of state of charge, we basically kept a constant high power, maybe not the peak power, but this almost like 170 kilowatts that we had over the whole range, basically, of the charging window that was measured.
Yeah, it's interesting. So, and I think we were always wondering, so what does NIO make then different in terms of technology you're using and performance to achieve such charging performance at the end?
Well, in the end, of course, it's a combination of a lot of different topics you have in the design phase and how you balance different requirements and properties to, in the end, build up a system that works well together. So that starting on chemistry level of the cells, whether you start with lithium iron phosphate, which is rather lower energy density but cheaper material compared to what most of the long-range luxury segment cars use, which is then a lithium nickel manganese cobalt oxide chemistry, which features higher cell energy density, which is also good for good charging performance, but which is of course way more costly compared to lithium iron phosphate, for example. But then it's not just that; it's the morphology of the electrode that is within the cells. It then is the connection of the cells. It's the interplay with the cooling system. So, am I able to get out excess heat enough so that I don't run into an overheating of the battery pack? And then it's also one of the big parts is how well do you know your battery? So the calibration, let's say what kind of profiles do you have in the system? And I think there we've done a very good job by looking and learning from our platforms from the very beginning, from 2018 all the way to now, and improving that battery and also those kind of like battery performance properties.
It's interesting, and I think you mentioned just the different technologies, and what we always discuss, or what we see, there is a study from TÜV that they do every year, and the top two parameters or KPIs why people hesitate in buying an electric vehicle is always range anxiety, which is always kind of number one in these studies, and the second parameter is cost. So, and I think it's interesting because, and somehow scary a little bit, because the trend monitoring this over the last 3 years, for instance, is going in a negative direction. So people do even have more anxiety or range anxiety. So it increases instead of decreases. So the interesting part is, and I mean, for performance improvements, you have chemistry, of course, that or the selection of technology. For instance, then increasing nickel contents for the cathode, or you use silicon in the anode as a chemistry, or you even go beyond for next generation technologies as solid state, for instance. And I mean, cost is important, as the battery is one of the most important or the most costly parts of an electric vehicle. And I think battery cells of battery system even make 70% of the cost, right? So that's really a key driver. And so the question is, how does NIO tackle these parameters to give more confidence to end users in terms of range anxiety, or make it more affordable? So what are your solutions and offers there?
I think for that we have actually come up with a quite unique way that on top of this charging performance, so that you can plug in at whether it's an AC charging pile or if it's a DC fast charging station, that you can also automatically swap out the whole battery pack, meaning so you go to a battery swapping station, as we call them, a power swap station. You automatically remove the battery from the bottom of the vehicle. and a new fully charged battery then is swapped into your car and you can continue your travel. This has a lot of benefits, actually. So it has the benefit on one hand that you can, by that, recharge basically in just a handful of minutes. So making that even faster than fast charging. On the other hand, what we can also do is that I mentioned before, we have different versions of battery ranges, right? So we have a standard range battery, so which is also a cheaper one, by that also consuming less resources. So, and then we have the high or long range battery variant, with which you of course have a longer range, right? But of course, which is a bit more costly, because in the same space you have to fit more advanced technology, which makes it just more expensive a bit. But now we've started that in China, but now also with a special permit, we're also allowed to do that in Europe. We can actually upgrade from a standard range battery to a long range battery. And you can basically decide it with each and every swap whether you want to upgrade or going back to your standard range battery, which of course, and again, gives you maybe a little shorter range, but which might be enough for your daily travels that you normally do, and just for your long-range vacation drive. For example, you take the more expensive long-range variant, but just as you need that. And by that, I think we're saving a lot of resources. We're giving our users a choice of what they want to have. And in the end, of course, that also gives us the chance to offer a cheaper option, basically, for, let's say, that you have to pay for a daily.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I mean, you are the only brand, right, that offers this kind of battery swapping technology itself. And so I'm also always wondering, like, how competitive do you see this battery swapping, specifically also in Europe, as charging infrastructure is building up, right? We're having more and more charging stations. And there are, of course, right now, not so many vehicles on the road. So that is, when you come to a swapping station, I would assume there are not as many, or the infrastructure is not so built up as you would have it for charging infrastructure, right? With fast charging stations, just simply. And when the numbers increase, so how competitive do you see that, and also in terms of willingness for people to adopt these kind of swapping? Because of course you can upgrade on the one hand side, but it can also happen that you downgrade for your batteries, right? And you get perhaps an older version of the battery that is being integrated in your EV.
So, of course, we've started first, let's say, in our home turf, so meaning China, where we've by now already built up more than 3,100 swapping stations where you can exchange your battery. So, and they're located on one hand on the major highway roads. So I think roughly about 800 of those, and the rest is really also in the more urban areas, so where you maybe do not have the chance to just charge it near the sidewalk, right? So there it gives you really a chance. And in China, we can also see that nowadays more than 50% of the energy that is recharged is basically coming from our swap stations and not from public charging. Although I have to mention, we also own the biggest privately owned charging networks or charging piles in China. In Europe, we're of course at the start of that. We're building up this network, this power network. We're at the moment at I think 59 battery swap stations, power swap stations here in Europe, and we're constantly building that up. So let's say with the market uptake, I think we're keeping that in pace. And therefore also offering that solution that people will have access to the respective swapping technology.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. I mean, for P3, what we also, what we recently published a study, and I think that is an interesting point, specifically when it comes to battery swapping, is always the discussion and the fear of fast battery degradation and battery aging. That is always, I think, being intensively discussed, and people are kind of scared of a fast degradation of the battery itself. So. And in the study, what we have done together with Avilo, we tested the state of health of an electric vehicle after a certain range of driving, be it then 100,000 kilometers, 200,000 kilometers, and we then measured the battery, the capacity of the battery. Mm-hmm. And I think what was impressive and to see, and this is what we're trying to motivate people also from, let's say, the myth or rumors that are out there of fast battery aging, is that actually, batteries don't age that fast, and the performance of batteries, even after driving 200,000 of kilometers, we still have a battery capacity of more than 80%. So, and I think, how do you see that in relation to, let's say, the concept that NIO offers in terms of the aging or degradation behavior from batteries?
As we now expect that batteries are living longer and longer, maybe not the battery is the limiting factor, but at some point your vehicle, right, is the limiting part. So also you there have some parts that age, and at some points, most often, I guess the number in the industry is always like 15 years of vehicle life. Let's say if we still have the batteries, there comes the next vehicle that has been produced later. We still can use the battery. You have good performance. So in the end, we need less batteries than if we fit a new battery to each newly built vehicle, for example. Mm. And in the end, with how we can monitor our batteries in the swapping station, have very good knowledge about the states, and we, as I said, we can do those regenerating cycles. It will also in the future be very, very easy to integrate it in whatever kind of second use if that is necessary.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting. And I mean, also what the study from us revealed, and I think we even tested our own fleet with around 50 vehicles. And I would say it's not the best driving behavior that we have. So I mean, there are probably people that really take care of the battery in terms of fast charging behavior and how they charge it, yes, and basically go a bit in the direction of the concept that you say. Okay, you can actually control the stress that is facing or that your battery is facing. But even then, also for the batteries, where potentially they do not care so much for like how much stress the battery sees. I think it was interesting to see that still there the aging behavior was really positive and even goes beyond that that OEMs actually guarantee as a warranty. So, and I think that gives confidence and should also give confidence to the end customers who buy the vehicle, that there is, or that the residual value of a battery at the end of the life is actually can expect it to be higher than probably rumors or fears are out there. So yeah, I
completely agree. In the end, I still have to say though, it's a lot easier if you can just swap out the battery from below the vehicle than if you have to take apart the whole vehicle to get to the battery, which are very current trends in some of our competitors. So there, let's say, it gets a bit tricky then with the sustainability and making it available for a second use if that is necessary. But yes, you're correct. So it's a lot depends, of course, on what is the what are the design targets? How do I balance the different? How do I balance the different properties like fast charging, like longevity, like energy density, and by that, of course, always all of those are associated with costs, right? And so, of course, the question is how can I bring down costs and still offer that very good performance that users are rightfully expecting, right? So right. We're both, of course, battery and EV enthusiasts, and I want to bring it out that actually EVs are working quite well, and the battery technology is not the limiting factor anymore. And that, as I said, you can have recent upgrades all the time, especially with NIO cars, and by not needing to buy a new vehicle, but by just swapping that in.
what is the outlook of NIO? What can we expect? So do we see also in future developments NIO actually overcoming the charging performance of a Porsche Taycan?
Well, we've mentioned it in the intro that the recent announcement of our new flagship sedan, the ET9, which was introduced in NIO Day 2024, so just before Christmas. It was introduced in China, in Guangzhou. And yes, so we are also introducing in our next platform a 900-volt system. And yes, the performance of our next batteries are also matching this luxury feeling that we want to have with the ET7, so that it's really a great car. And sure, the charging curve will then also follow probably more the charging curves that we've seen with other 800-volt models. That are especially strong in giving you a strong push in the first 10 minutes of charging. So I think we can expect at the rollout in 2025 like peak charging power of like 325 kilowatts. And the charging times well within the 20-minute limit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's exciting. And I'm pretty sure we are also excited to get that vehicle for our test drives in order to do the benchmark for the next charging index.
I guess an update of the P3 charging index Asia is is set for that. Yes.
Yeah, it sounds great.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much for being our guest here today here at NIO House Berlin.
Pleasure.
It was great talking with you about the topics of fast charging, the topics of sustainability, of longevity of batteries, and especially how NIO can extend the life of batteries, and also with this great outlook to our ET9 being introduced or coming to the market in China within this year. Thanks again for being here, Ines. And
thank you for the invitation. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Follow us on House of NIO, a NIO podcast.